Hello everyone, David here bringing you guys the inevitable, which was going to be a spoiler discussion on Star Wars The Force Awakens. So, if you have not seen the movie, I question the functions inside your brain as to why you clicked this video in the first place. So I'm assuming, safely, that you have seen the movie and that's why you're watching this video, okay? Take that as your legitimate warning, okay? It just can't get any easier to comprehend than that. Not to insult your intelligence, but okay. So if you're watching, I'm assuming you saw the movie, so let's go ahead and talk about spoilers. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is something that I did touch upon in the review. I just didn't go into too much depth because I didn't want to give anything away. And that's a criticism that a lot of people had with the movie that I acknowledge is in the movie, and in a way it could be considered a nitpick of mine, but at the same time, I accepted it. I was completely over it because this was the start of a new trilogy. And that complaint or that nitpick would have to be how the structure of the movie follows the original trilogy, specifically A New Hope. That very first Star Wars movie, there are certain scenes that almost completely mirrored that original film. Some specific ones would have to be the cantina scene. There's a cantina-ish scene in this movie where we have our characters enter this bar, and you cut from one alien to the next, and you look at all their designs, and you take it in, all the practical effects, and it looks cool, but there's no denying that this is exactly copying that initial cantina scene with a much less memorable song. I mean, it's kind of like a reggae song that I don't feel, I'm not going to tap my toes to whenever I hear it, like, it's not going to be like that. This kind of harkens back to that initial nitpick of mine about how there was nothing that infectious with the score. It was a good score from John Williams, but there was no theme that got stuck in my head. Anyways, besides that, you also got certain characters that also mirror those original films. Like, take the First Order, for instance. I know it's supposed to be the Empire 2.0, but you even got some characters that are legitimately lifted from that original film. General Hux, played by Domhnall Gleeson, I think that's how you pronounce his first name, he's legitimately Tarkin from that first movie. He's that second in command who's in charge of the actual operations of the First Order, while at the same time, Kylo Ren is Darth Vader, and he's the one who's kind of like the muscle, because he's the one who has the Force on his side. And then you got Captain Phasma, who is much more like the Boba Fett, except she's actually enlisted in the First Order, unlike Boba Fett, who was just simply a bounty hunter for hire. The movie opens with a battle between the First Order and a much more resilient group. You know what other movie started that way? New Hope. You got the Empire boarding the ship, they fight off those rebels, and they kind of end up losing, and that's where we get 3PO and 3PO and R2-D2 be deployed through that pod with the plans to the Death Star. And in this movie, you got BB-8 running away, escaping the chaos with not plans, but clues as to where Luke Skywalker is actually hiding. So there's no denying that there are some very similar parallels between this movie and that original trilogy, specifically A New Hope. But for me, I accepted it because this is that first movie. I feel like it's okay to borrow a little bit from that mythology for the first movie. Just don't repeat it with 8 and 9. I'm expecting some brand new directions with 8 and 9. So I'm willing to overlook the similarities with this movie and that first 1977 Star Wars film, because not only were they done well, it's not like a copycat and trying too hard. It was striking this balance between paying homage to those original films with not just some presentational details like the heads-up display on the little thing that Finn was using in the Millennium Falcon, that is exactly the way it was in that original movie, but also story elements that completely mirror those scenes from the first movie. But not only they were done right, but they serve as a bit of an anchor for this movie to be absorbed by this brand new generation. A lot of kids are going to be growing up with this movie, and they're going to look at Kylo Ren and be like, that was the Darth Vader for them, just like Vader was for us, or at least for my parents, and for me, who has a much more fun appreciation for the original trilogy rather than the prequels. And another scene that was lifted from that first film is the duel between the mentor figure and the main villain of the movie that results in the heroic sacrifice of that elder mentor figure protagonist. And the figure that we see perish in this movie is Han Solo. One of the big things that a lot of people were speculating about Episode 7 was whether or not somebody from that original cast was going to die, and certain clues started to point towards Han Solo, mainly on the emphasis through the marketing and the movie itself on Han Solo having all this screen time and having this profound effect amongst our brand new cast of characters. And that one scene between him and Leia hugging and Leia telling him to come back in one piece, that was the final nail in the coffin. No, I'm sorry, that's a bad choice of words, but that was a final clue that let me go. That made me go, yeah, you're not coming back. You're not coming back from this one. And all the tea leaves were right there, and so Han Solo unfortunately passes away in Episode 7. Well, I don't want to say unfortunately because I felt like this was. I mean, my girlfriend was devastated by this, but I accepted it. I don't know. There was something about it that, sure, it was a little heart-churning to see Han Solo get killed off, but it felt like a rite of passage. Like I said, it was that turning point that it served as an anchor to now pass the torch from the old, in this original trilogy, over to the new generation of Star Wars characters with Finn, Rey, and who would end up killing him? Kylo Ren, who is revealed to be the son of both Han Solo and Leia. So other theories about Kylo Ren potentially being a Skywalker pretty much ended up being true, and now there is a legitimate connection to him and Darth Vader and why he worships Darth Vader so much. Part of me does kind of wish that maybe he was this Darth Vader fanatic and he was just trying to take up the mantle of being a Sith Lord himself, and that's kind of why it would kind of make sense for his lightsaber battle later on with Rey to be kind of on the weak side from his perspective, because he was so strong with the Force that he didn't think to train himself in the art of actual lightsaber combat, which is why I found that fight to be kind of acceptable. A lot of people found it hard to believe that him, who's able to stop a blaster laser in mid-air, has trouble fighting off a girl who just barely learned she is one with the Force. I believe it in that he was too focused on being strong with the Force that he wasn't strong with the lightsaber, and that's where Rey got the upper hand. Anyways, that's a whole nother topic. Him being the product of both Leia and Han Solo, that again kind of mirrors a family issue that we had in that original trilogy with Luke being the son of Darth Vader, which was the biggest twist of all time. Here, it was a neat twist, but of course did feel like a replication of that original turning point in not just Star Wars, but that entire original trilogy. It was the thing that just changed everything and made Empire Strikes Back one of the better sequels. We got this reveal in the first movie, but I dug it. I dug it for this movie. I didn't dig it for the entire mythos because, like I said, it's kind of been there, done that with that original film. It's just that it was done well because I really did feel this tragedy within Kylo Ren's character. It's just something that I hope gets much more fleshed out in the second movie, because here I felt like it was maybe blown out a little too early, especially with the reveal of him taking off his mask to Rey. During that scene, I felt like he should have kept his mask on the entire time, because whenever Ren had the mask on, he was legitimately intimidating, especially once he pulled out that sword, and there was that scene where Rey is in the forest and she would hear the sound effects of his sword waving around. That was legitimately scary. As soon as he takes off his helmet in that scene where he's interrogating Rey, he kind of lost his scariness a little bit, and he became more of this tragic character that I didn't sympathize just yet, because it was just a little too early for that. I felt like if they waited to have that reveal in episode 8 or something, it would have made much more sense. Instead, they kind of revealed that to us a little bit too early in this movie, and so whenever he took off that mask, he was much more of this tragic character that was weak and feeble. And I wanted to have that intimidating force still, so, no pun intended. So I kind of wish that maybe he kept the mask on for that first scene, and then him taking it off with Han Solo would have been much more meaningful. And speaking of Rey, so she is the legitimate hero Jedi of this story. The trailers and the posters made it seem like it was Finn, because he's always the one that's holding the lightsaber in that material. But now we know for a fact that it's actually Rey, which is another assumption that people were having. And it's almost like a scavenger hunt. It's almost like people's predictions of the movie turned out to be correct, but not in a very predictable way, because I feel like all of us were having these second thoughts, like these doubts, like maybe it's this, maybe it's not, but we're betting that it's going to be this, and we ended up being right. So it was almost like a scavenger hunt where we simply just gathered the clues together and connected the dots ourselves, but it wasn't necessarily easy. It wasn't something that was too obvious. So kudos, J.J. Abrams. We managed to get the actual answer from watching the movie and get our confirmations correct, but it was fun leading us on with all these mysterious marketing material. Now, Rey herself being a legitimate Jedi, or at least having the potential to become a Jedi, is very, very curious. Not only would she be probably, I think, not the first female Jedi, because we've seen female Jedi not only in the prequels, but also in the expanded universe, and, you know, all this different type of stories from the Star Wars universe. I get it, but this is the first time that a female Jedi is going to be probably the main character for an entire cinematic trilogy. And to me, that's very exciting. It's a refreshing change for a franchise such as this. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see the direction that Rey takes as a character. Hopefully she's going to be a very compelling character that's going to carry this franchise or carry this trilogy. And not just her, but I'm hoping that various characters from this movie return. Finn, Poe, and I do hope that we get to see more of that bromance between Poe and Finn, which we saw an awful lot in this movie, and it was very fun to see. And other characters that I'm fully expected to see back are, of course, pretty much all the top people from that First Order. Kylo Ren, who managed to get away after that platform split up between him and Rey that pretty much ended that fight. General Hux, who is told to evacuate by Supreme Leader Snoke, who is the mysterious emperor-like figure that is pulling the strings within the First Order. And from what people believe, he is probably a very ancient Sith Lord who has been around for some time, probably even for longer than the Emperor, within the far reaches of space, and now he's come to the bigger picture and he's now controlling everything. And so, at first, it seemed very daunting to see this massive figure talking down to Kylo and General Hux, but then we learned that this is just a holographic projection, so it would be kind of funny if maybe when they do meet in person for the very first time, Supreme Leader Snoke is like this tiny little Yoda type of figure, and Kylo and Hux are like, okay, sir. But the only thing that we can do with Snoke is speculate, because that's one of the biggest unanswered questions from Episode 7 that we were just left hanging with, because all of us were wondering, who the hell was that guy? Who the hell was that CG dude up high? I mean, we have no clue with who he is, except that he's some kind of Emperor-like figure mirroring that Emperor character from the original trilogy. And he is in command of both Hux and Kylo Ren and pretty much the entire First Order. And chances are we're going to see something come about between him and what people believe to be the most powerful Jedi in the universe at the time of the chronological time of this movie, Luke Skywalker. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and talk about Luke Skywalker. Or, I should say, let's talk about some characters that I thought were pushed to the side a little too much, especially for the big deal that they were being made out to be. First of all, let's start off from least important to most important. First off, it was only until watching the scene between Han Solo and those gangsters that were pretty much trying to claim the bounty on the Millennium Falcon, as well as the droid BB-8 that was carrying the plans that were signaling the location of Luke Skywalker. It was only at the time that we got to that scene that I barely remembered that it was announced some time ago when they were filming the movie back in 2014 or whatever, that certain actors, I can't remember their names because they're Indonesian and their names are a little tough, well, not tough to pronounce, but a little tough to remember. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But I distinctly do, at the time of watching that scene, it was at that moment where I remembered that they announced that a couple of actors that were famous for the Raid movies, the Raid and Raid 2, Retribution or something like that, but the Raid movies that are known to be these Indonesian martial art movies that are known for very extravagant, very exhilarating, and rather violent action sequences that a lot of people loved, myself included. Two prominent actors from those two movies, and from what people believe are going to be a third movie, do make a form of cameo in this movie, because it was announced that they were going to be a part of the movie, and then they were gone in one scene. So that was a little bit of a bummer, especially since they didn't utilize their choreography. These guys are very, very gifted in choreographing martial arts to make it look believable, and yet they're in a scene where they're legitimately running away from these monsters that were eating them. That was a little bit disappointing. Even more disappointing was Captain Phasma, who I guess metaphorically got Boba Fetted because the marketing made it seem like she was going to be this badass secondary villain. She's got her chrome outfit. She was looking cool and everything. Everybody was running toward the stores to buy her action figure, and she's in the movie for like about 5 minutes because she has those couple of scenes early on in the movie where she's telling Finn what to do with this very intimidating voice. Who told you to take off that helmet? I was like, oh shit, she means business. Then she gets taken down by Finn and Han Solo, and is manipulated to turn off the shields in the Star Killer base. That's it. And then she's gone. I don't know where she went. I don't know if she died when the Star Killer base was destroyed, which again is practically another Death Star. It even has a scene where it shows its brute force by destroying a planet, just like in New Hope destroyed the Death Star destroyed Alderaan. Yeah. So Captain Phasma, again, slightly a little bit of a letdown, but here's the hoping that she, along with the rest of the First Order, got away as well. And then there's the big guy himself, Luke Skywalker. I remember J.J. Abrams saying that there's a specific reason for why he's not in the posters and for why he's not in the trailer. And now we know why. Because he doesn't have enough screen time to be put in the trailer. Because he's in the last minute of the movie. I'm sorry, but this was my only legitimate complaint and humongous disappointment with Star Wars The Force Awakens. It was being made a big deal as to where's Luke Skywalker. Oh my god, it's one of the big questions that is a humongous element to the plot for this movie. Everyone's talking about, like, oh, where's Luke Skywalker? He's going to be the one that's going to be able to turn the war in our favor. And us as viewers were wondering, why is he not in the posters? Why is he barely in the trailer? We see him voicing over that second trailer with this one shot of him putting his hand over R2-D2, and then he was completely absent from the third trailer. That's because he's literally at the last minute of the movie where Rey encounters him on that island amongst the Jedi steps. That is it. Here's to hoping he's going to be a much more prominent player in Episode 8, because for sure we know he's going to be in that. Mark Hamill already confirmed that he's growing out his beard to be in that next installment in the franchise. But my god, why all the build-up? Why the dude has a minute of screen time, and when the end credits roll, his name is second in billing. You got Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher. Dude's in the movie for a minute. What was up with that? He doesn't even talk. Daniel Craig as the stormtrooper and Simon Pegg as that junkyard dealer had more screen time and more dialogue and more to do with their characters than Luke Skywalker did in this movie. So, needless to say, I was a little bit disappointed. Both me and my girlfriend were just there like, they didn't just do that, did they? And I was hoping for maybe an end credit scene where he has something else to do, but there was nothing. We waited. There was nothing. Which I'm partially glad, because that would have been a little forced, no pun intended. But that would have been a little too much like the Marvel movies, just because Disney owns them. No, they don't have to do that. So yeah, I felt like this was more on the fault of the marketing people than it was on J.J. Abrams and the people behind the movie. Because if they did not emphasize that Mark Hamill was going to be in the movie as Luke Skywalker, this wouldn't have been a problem. If this was a legitimate surprise, something saved up for us who have been waiting for this movie forever. Or at least for the past 10 years or so, since the last Star Wars movie. And then almost 30 years since the last good Star Wars movie. It would have been an amazing delight to see Luke in the flesh turn around and greet Rey. And looking at his lightsaber like, that's mine, with that look on his face like, that's mine, where'd you get that? Without actually saying anything. That would have had such a profound effect if nobody told us that Luke Skywalker was going to be in it. And if we had asked, they had denied it. If they had denied and said, nope, he's not going to be in the movie, the theme of him being in the universe and being missing is going to be a big part of the story, but he's not going to be in the movie. He's not going to be in the movie. And then so when he turns around, we all would have just lost our minds. But no, Instead, they decided to hype it up. They decided to show this shot, which ended up being part of this vision that Rey was having when she touched the lightsaber. So that was also a little bit of a letdown. So yeah, here's the hoping that he is going to be legitimately in that very first scene of Episode 8, because they have so much to make up for just having 1 minute of Luke being on screen. And that really about does it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of callbacks and Easter eggs for die-hard Star Wars fans. There's plenty of references and little visual gags. For me, the one that stuck in my head the most, I mean, I'm going to be overlooking a ton of... to be honest, I'm legitimately tempted to go see the movie a second time. Not saying that it's not worth being seen a second time, but I'd rather go see it with somebody who either has not seen it, oh my god, or somebody who has seen it, but we didn't see it together, and now we kind of want to have like this discussion about it, and so we'll treat ourselves to seeing it a second time, because I legitimately would not mind. And if I do so, I would definitely love to pay much more attention to see if there's some Easter eggs in the background, or something that was put in the movie to get for us Star Wars fans. But the one thing that did stay in my mind was the scene where Finn is trying to patch up Chewbacca after he got shot in the shoulder, and he's looking in a bag for like things to like medical stuff to help him out, and he pulls out this white orb, and I remember my girlfriend was like, they put that thing, he was holding that on screen longer than he should have. Was there a reason for that? And that's because it's something that I was able to notice, was that was the orb that Luke was using to train himself on board of the Millennium Falcon when he had the visor on and that thing kept shooting laser at him while he was trying to deflect him with the lightsaber as Obi-Wan was trying to train him. That's what that was. So little things like that are spread out across the movie. Some people do think it's a little bit too much at times. For me, the one Easter egg that I thought was, I don't want to say too much. I smiled when I saw it, but I do think they could have saved some up for the next movie or just taken some out so I wasn't trying too hard, even though I didn't feel like I was trying too hard, was when Finn accidentally turns on that little game that's on the table that Chewbacca and C-3PO and R2-D2 were playing in that first movie. That I think could have been done away with, or they just could have saved that up for another movie. The Millennium Falcon is still in their possession, so there's, you know, what can you do? You know, the filmmakers are just as much fans of the original trilogy as we are. So I think we all need to celebrate Star Wars together, and enough with the hate. Plus, if you're complaining that Force Awakens was too much like the original, I don't know what you want. Okay, if it's done in the right way and it's handled very well, I take it. Because people are going to complain that it's too much like the original, or when they try to do something different, they're going to be like, oh, it's too different. Why don't you just do it like you did before? I remember seeing that one picture that I think Sean Long and Jimmy Johns and I think Andre from Black Nerd Comedy, they all shared this image where the internet complains that it's too much like the original, or the internet complains that they're changing it up and they show an image of the new Ghostbusters that has an all-female cast. Nobody ends up happy. But I am. So, let me know what you guys thought of Star Wars The Force Awakens. Full spoilers. This is a spoiler video, so you can go ahead and post it in the comments below. Go crazy. And I'll see you guys next time.